Hi there, it's Deborah Irene with Storytime, and I'm going to read you a story today from my mother's book, Helen's Heritage. We've been reading about her siblings. In the back of her book, we have a section called The Clan, where she devotes a few paragraphs to each one of her siblings. So today we're going to read about the fourth child that was born to Bernard and Maggie. It was a girl, and her name was Myrtle Elnora, and we all knew her by her middle name, Elnora. She was born in 1909. Let me see if you can see a few of these pictures that we have in this section of my mother's book of her. See if you can make that out. This is a picture in her younger years, probably as a teenager would be my guess. And then this picture, which I thoroughly love, is one of her only child, Geneva, and her grandson, Michael, and then my grandpa, James Bernard. And then this picture over here is in her later years of her and her husband, Newt. And we'll read about all of them just a little bit here. So let me remind you that this is my mother's voice. She's telling this story and remembering her sister, Elnora. Myrtle Elnora was born on October 27, 1909. She was the fourth child and second daughter. Everyone called her Elnora. Like most of my older siblings, she helped care for me. I was with her a great deal. Her daughter, Geneva, was my brother Carl's age, and I really liked playing with her. We grew up together. Geneva really was more like my mother's sister. Elnora was good to me and was a very kind sister. She didn't have an easy life, but made a life for herself in Geneva by doing domestic work for other people. She always managed to have her own space or place. She did whatever necessary to get by. Sometimes she lived with her employers when Geneva was allowed to live there with her. But most of the time she had her own apartment or small house. After I moved to California, during one of my visits back in Missouri, I asked her to come to California to live. She said she would if she had a job. So when I returned to California, I found 2 jobs for her. She took one and I took the other. We laughed a lot whenever we were together. It was wonderful to have her in California and be such a good aunt to my girls. Geneva moved to California at the same time, so her son, Michael Dean, Elnora's only grandchild, grew up with my girls. Elnora met her husband Newt in California and once told me that was the happiest time of her life. He was a good husband to her and was heartbroken with her sudden death. She had rheumatic fever when she was 16, which caused heart problems for her, a leaky valve. She came to Missouri for a summer visit in 1968, our second summer after we moved from Arkansas to Missouri. It was so good to see her, and I soon learned it was a meant-to-be visit. Just a couple of weeks after returning home to Newt in California, she collapsed. The telephone rang late one night. It was Clara with the bad news. Elnora had died of heart failure. I did not want to hear that news, but I almost expected it. She was only 58 years old, but her heart was worn out. Several of us made the trip to California for the funeral. she was laid to rest in Santa Paula. I felt like I had lost the best friend I had ever had. We lost her on August 1, 1968. And her only child, Geneva Marie, was born in 1930. And she passed away a couple of years ago as well. And she only had the one grandson, Michael, and he lives in Idaho now. You know, with not having many descendants, it kind of saddens me a little bit that a lot of people don't know about Elnora. And I've mentioned before that I feel really privileged that having been born in California, and those of my mother's siblings who lived in California when we did, I was very close to all of them the first 10 years of my life. They were a huge part of my life. And then when we moved back to the Midwest, I feel privileged that I got to know the aunts and uncles who lived back here equally as well. Aunt Elnora was very special, and I would like to read to you just a little bit more about her, because I woke up one morning in 2013 and I couldn't get her off of my mind. She was just on my mind. So I wrote a blog and I just called it Aunt Elnora. Let me read that to you. And this is from my book, Someday I Will Write. Reading in the section of that book that I call A Time to Remember. So we're chapter 5, Aunt Elnora, and this is my voice and my words. She wasn't very tall. She was round, full, robust. She was a dark one. You see, of my mother's 15 siblings, about half of them were like Mama, fair-skinned with light hair and blue eyes, which came from Grandma, and the other half had dark hair, some with brown eyes, like Grandpa. Aunt Elnora had a gentle, quiet spirit, but had a sense of humor, which she revealed to her inner family circle. She was my surrogate grandmother during my early childhood in California. Although she was my aunt, my mother's second oldest sister of 8 girls, she had one daughter about my mother's age, Geneva, and one grandson. She found the love of her life in her 50s. I remember being a little embarrassed when they kissed on our porch as I ran into the house with my cousins and friends. Today, I smile when I think of that and am glad that I witnessed their tender love, Newt and Elnora. It irritated me that my best friend's mother kept saying her name wrong. Eleanor was that former president's wife's name. Many times I corrected her. Elnora, 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 not Eleanor. Her yard overflowed with flowers. When sisters and I spent the night, she prepared pancakes for breakfast. She made them tiny so that we could boast about how many we had eaten. Maybe a dozen. Sister Vicky ate more. There were white and black rabbits in cages in her backyard. She let us pet them. Their fur was so soft. Our poodle Flip liked playing with her dog Alvin. We moved far away back to the family's hometown in Missouri, around more aunts, uncles, cousins, and Grandpa. 3 years later, she came to visit. The summer of 1968. She cooked for us once again, even though Mama said she had not been feeling well. I remember having a discussion with my younger sister about age as we waited at the table. Kathy wanted to know if the age 30 was old. I said yes. But before I could explain further, and I did have another explanation, it was old in terms of not being a child. But I didn't get a chance to explain that. because Aunt Elnora bustled through the doorway between the kitchen and dining room with a big bowl of mashed potatoes, set them on the table, and corrected me. Why, no! 30's not old. I wish I was 30. Yes, I think Aunt Elnora was old. After all, she had been like my grandmother all those years in California since Grandma died when I was only 3 years old. After she cooked, she also washed the dishes and then went in the living room and sat in the rocking chair. Mama said her bad heart drained her energy, a leaky valve which might have been caused from a childhood bout of rheumatic fever. The Lawrence Welk show came on and someone sang "In the Garden." Aunt Elnora said, "That is my favorite hymn. I want someone to sing that at my funeral." I remember thinking, "That's not a nice song, but you're not that old yet." She stayed a few more days, then returned home on a bus to her life with her caring husband. They had moved to a duplex community where he worked as the caretaker. A few weeks later, still in the heat of the summer, August 1, I asked Mama if I could sleep on the couch because it was so hot upstairs in my bedroom. You know, we didn't all have air conditioning back in the 60s. Soon after Mama had climbed into bed, the telephone on the end table next to the couch where I lay rang. Mother could not understand why I would not answer it, as she rushed into the living room and picked up the receiver. Mother listened as Aunt Clara said, "Hold on to your hats. I've got bad news." I didn't know why, but I already knew. As the story goes, Newt and Elnora had finished dinner and shared a laugh about eating a whole chicken. It was only a little chicken. Then he left to lock up the laundry facilities. A neighbor saw Elnora come out of their house and look toward the laundry room as she fell on the sidewalk. She was already gone when Newt reached her, although she was transported by ambulance to the hospital in hopes of a miracle. But this was not the day for a miracle. The family in Missouri made plans to travel for the funeral and burial, which would be in California. Aunt Eunice and Uncle Rube offered to take both of their vehicles, so I was privileged to go. After Kathy, Karen, and I climbed into the back of the station wagon, Grandpa reached for the door to shut it and said, "I should grab my bag and get in there with you." But he couldn't make the trip. He was 88 and had outlived 4 of his 16 children. We arrived at Geneva's house in the middle of the night. I visited cousins and a close friend from school. Then, in a couple of days, it was time for the funeral. I was 12 years old. It was not my first funeral. I knew the drill, reading of the obituary, a song or two, a short message, and then the viewing. As the minister read the obituary, I recalled what she had said that evening in the rocker. In the garden. Why didn't I tell someone? Well, she must have mentioned that to someone else as well, because when he was finished, a recording of a song began. I come to the garden alone. And I breathed a sigh of relief. After the sermon, I stood alongside Mama in the family line, but when we were to move closer, I could not. Mama grabbed my waist to help me, but I said, "I can't." I stayed back as Mama stepped closer for that one last goodbye. Aunt Elnora's hair had been permed since returning to California, and I wasn't sure they had the right person. Could there have been a mistake? I guess not, because we proceeded to the cemetery and laid her to rest. 2 score and 4 years have passed since that hot summer of 1968, and I don't know why Aunt Elnora is at the forefront of my mind and in my heart. Maybe it's because at my next birthday, I will be the age she was at her death. I have missed her. We all have missed her. And I realize she really was not that old. But like her, I have come to understand my mortality. I find myself thinking her same thoughts. I have asked my sisters if I precede them in death to please play Give Me Jesus by Fernando Ortega at my funeral. We ended up playing that at my mother's funeral. One last thing. Aunt Elnora, when my time comes, make sure you tag along with Grandpa and Grandma and escort me up that pearly white staircase, or meet me at the top. It will be so good to see you. And we put a couple of pictures in this book, and I want you to look at that. This picture here is of Elnora and Geneva, and I wish they were in color. And this is a picture of several years before that, after they moved to California, Elnora, Geneva, and Michael. But look how dressed up they are. I know a lot of my extended family members listen to these videos, and I want you to know that on Sundays they dressed up. Most of the time, Elnora and Geneva had a corsage on that someone had bought for them. We had many meals on Sundays in California after church, and she was a wonderful aunt. Geneva was a wonderful aunt. My mother dearly loved them both. And if you didn't get to meet her, I'm sorry that you didn't. She was a special person. This is Deborah Irene with Stories and Lessons from My Mother, reading about her second oldest sister, Elnora, from her book, Helen's Heritage, back here, and from my book, Someday I Will Write. And Aunt Elnora is sprinkled throughout all three of my books. A little bit here, a little bit there, because she was a special person. I hope you enjoyed reading about Myrtle, Elnora. It's Deborah Irene with Storytime, and I'll see you next time.